Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods, yeah. One in particular, I'm just a messenger, let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box. And you cannot compare them at all, so don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Yeah. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Woo. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
What is going on, everybody? Matt and Matt here again to break down the Monday Night Football doubleheader between the Buffalo Bills 49ers and the Pittsburgh Steelers Washington football team. We will talk, of course, the game tonight between the Steelers, Cowboys, and waivers as we head into the fantasy playoffs. Matt, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, I think describing it without a pause, saying it's the Cowboys, the Ravens, and the waivers as the matchup is befitting Baltimore, who has had to replace a lot of players. And I think both of us are feeling better than Carson Wentz, who, you know, it's early December, and yet again he's out of the lineup.
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, I don't know how great of a move this will be for Philly, but we can definitely discuss that. I wish Baltimore were missing more people on their defense, because I need a huge game out of Zeke tonight, or else it's over for me. So I'm not expecting that's going to happen. So
I went to full Matt Bruning in my work league where I needed a win as Antonio Gibson broke his foot.
Oof. Yeah.
I broke my chances of coming back. And then Raheem Mostert, you know, would it have killed them to throw a couple 80-yard touchdown passes to him? I mean, it would have made me happier.
Right. No, I'm right there with you. Like, if I could get Zeke to get like a 70-yard receiving touchdown and then like 50 yards rushing, maybe a rushing touchdown, I'd be feeling pretty good moving into the playoffs. But I've pretty much resigned myself to the fact that that's not going to happen. He's going to get me like 4 points tonight. So, you know what? I'm not going to lie. There's still a little piece of me that's secretly hoping that Zeke goes off tonight.
Is part of your heart going to die when it's Pollard that gets the 70-yard touchdown reception?
No, I've kind of just given up, if I'm being honest. It's one of those things where I shouldn't say it's just this one league. It's been 2 years now. This will be the second year in a row I haven't made the playoffs, and it's just frustrating because I hate to sound arrogant, but I know I'm better than most of the people in this league. And just the past 2 years, I haven't been able to get over the hump to get back in. Won 3 out of 4 going into last year. And so it's one of those things where it's like it's frustrating not being there, especially because that last year when I missed, as I've complained about on here for people who've been listening, I'm sure you'll know the Tim Patrick anger. I missed winning my 3-peat championship by literally 0.5 points, where all I needed was Tim Patrick to catch that pass, and it got intercepted by Case Keenum a couple of years ago. And so after that, talking all kinds of shit that I did because I felt like I should have won a championship for 3 straight years in a row, and then now I've not been able to make it back into the playoffs. It's just a tad bit embarrassing. So it's one of those things, but comes and goes. You know, I did not have a bad team this year, but injuries and everything have just really kind of screwed me.
Is it embarrassing, like writing the league recap for week 12 on Sunday morning and posting it to the chat and making your game of the week for week 13 and saying it was a must win for both people, and we know that the person you're playing is definitely not the one that's going to win, and then losing?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually pretty embarrassing as well. I'll give you that. Speaking of embarrassing, Pittsburgh Steelers losing to the Washington football team. I don't think many of us had predicted that was going to happen, but they do win 23-17 on Washington's side. As you mentioned, Gibson obviously goes out hurt in this one just 1 point before that happens. J.D. McKissick comes in and mops up 17 points. Terry McLaurin 3, Cam Sims 14, and Logan Thomas the big night 24. Huge win for Washington, but they're still chasing the Giants. Do you think that they can get past the Giants and win the NFC East?
I mean, see, that's the question. The Giants seem to have a little bit of a more favorable schedule, and if they end up with the same record, the Giants get it. So Washington not only has to catch the Giants, which last night, just put them back on even footing, they have to pass them, and I think that's tough. I think they can do it. Both of these teams have actually impressed me of late, and especially in these week 13 wins. The Giants going on the road without Daniel Jones and stoning the Seahawks was pretty impressive. Equally as impressive as Washington doing the same thing to Pittsburgh. So, we've made fun of this division for a long time, but now they look to have at least two legitimate contenders and not the two that anybody would have picked in August. If you had told me two teams are battling for the NFC East, I would have told you Cowboys, Eagles, no problem. And those are the ones that seem kind of out in the weeds right now.
Yeah, I mean, it only took them 12 weeks to get here, so they took their sweet time to start making it interesting. But yeah, I'm with you. As I mentioned beforehand, I think would have been Thanksgiving week when we had Dennis on and we redid our playoff picks. I picked Washington mostly because I did want to see Alex Smith get in there for one final run. It looks like he may be back next year with this team, so it might not be a final run. But I like their defense in general and some of the pieces they have on offense. But I'm with you. I think the Giants definitely have the upper hand. Are you worried about Gibson now? I'll be honest. I know that he went out. I was
yeah.
Serious it is.
I'm worried if he misses extended time. Peyton Barber's serviceable. J.D. McKissick adds quite a dimension as a pass receiver. I mean, I don't think it would be crippling. It's not like – but Gibson is a very good player who's been coming on. I think that makes their offense a little more limited. Gibson definitely seemed to have more dimensions than a guy like Barber. They were even talking about that on the telecast. You know what you have in Peyton Barber. He's not a bad player, but he's going to take it and pile drive into the line and, 2 yards in a cloud of dust kind of thing. McKissick, we've seen him be a decent pass receiver, so maybe they don't lose a lot there. But you want to be at strength. I think it's a real bummer for those of us going into fantasy playoffs because he's been a reliable start too. If you thought you were going to miss him, even if he's out only 1 or 2 weeks, if you're Washington, you're probably trying to make sure he's healthy for the playoffs. So if you're worried about it, maybe you do let him rest a week or two, which makes sense from a football standpoint. But from our standpoint, this is the worst possible time to be losing guys.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, if he is going to be out for a couple of weeks, my bet would go on McKissick being the guy to roster here. But chances are, with the way he'd been playing before, Antonio Gibson really seemed to be taking over the role entirely. A lot of people picked him up, so chances are he is not available. On Pittsburgh's side, Ben 18 points, Snell 3, Deontay Johnson 21, Chase Claypool 5, Juju 9, and Eric Ebron 13. Another sloppy game for Pittsburgh. Just receivers looked out of sync. Big Ben didn't have necessarily his greatest day either. Is this the kick in the pants that they needed to get it going, though? As it did seem like a lot of the players and Coach Tomlin were happy that they lost this week to kind of, as they said, quote unquote, reignite the fire.
They've been playing sloppy for a couple weeks, but I think it's also fair to wonder if maybe they were getting a little more credit. I posted this meme to you, which I thought was hilarious. That was on NFL memes about the road to 11-1 was crazy for the Steelers. Beat Daniel Jones, beat the injured Broncos, beat the Texans, beat a burned out Carson Wentz, beat the Browns with no Chubb. The refs beat the Titans. The refs beat the Ravens, beat the 2-7 Cowboys, and they almost lost that game, which was – beat the 2-5-1 Bengals, beat the 1-8 Jaguars, beat the practice squad for the Ravens, and then lost to a team with no name.
Yeah.
And, maybe that's a little bit of Steelers hate, and they do play for jokes. Some of those wins were good, and they've looked good at times this season. I thought the win over the Titans was more of a signature win than that meme would give credit. But they haven't played the hardest schedule, and they've gotten lucky at the times they've caught some teams. I'm going to be really curious if they can how they match up with the Browns in that second matchup where the Browns should be more at full strength, because we've talked about the Browns are a completely different team when they have Chubb in there.
Yeah.
But Pittsburgh's been sloppy the last couple of weeks. The Wednesday game against the Ravens, who had almost half their team on COVID IR, they were lucky to win that, in my opinion, with the way they played. And we saw them do some of the same things against Washington. They were up 14-0. They were dropping passes. They didn't look sharp. So sometimes losing is the kick in the pants you need. They are fortunate to have both Cleveland in their own division and the Chiefs in the AFC in general right on their hiney. So they don't have a lot of margin for error, and I think that's going to keep them honest. But they have some big matchups, coming down the end here, and we need to see what they look like.
Yeah, while I agree with you, it is kind of funny to see that. The one thing I will say is we saw the Washington football team win last night. I've been arguing mostly for the Brown side of things, so I guess I can't talk out of both sides of my mouth and discredit what the Steelers have done. You can only play who's on your schedule. The Steelers didn't make the schedule, and I would say any win in the NFL is a good win because as we've seen with the Jets, who everybody says is the worst team in football, yet the past 3 weeks, they've been very close to winning games. So you could lose any single week. So the fact that they win 11-0 up until last night, as much as I hate to admit this as a Browns fan, is still impressive because they still won the games, because you can lose any single week. I mean, go ahead.
In their last 4, they are at the Bills, then at the Bengals. Figure is easy. Home for the Colts, at the Browns. So 3 of the last 4 on the road, and 3 of them against teams you suspect will be in the playoffs. I think we're going to learn a lot about Pittsburgh.
I agree.
4 games.
I'm not trying to say that they're the best team in the league. I would still take Kansas City over them right now, though I don't think that they're far off from Kansas City. And I think not even just to put the Browns up there in this conversation, I would say almost all of the teams in the AFC playoff race right now, the teams actually in. I'm not going to say the Raiders, Ravens, and Patriots, who are all technically on the outside looking in right now. I think all of the teams in the AFC in the playoff race right now, I would not be surprised if any 2 of them were playing in the AFC championship game right now. Like, I think all these teams have strengths. They all have weaknesses, and it's really going to be about who you're playing at the right time and who makes that mistake, because all these teams have deficiencies, offense, defensively, strengths, weaknesses. So I think in all honesty, in my opinion, the AFC is much stronger this year than the NFC, which I think we were making the vice versa argument last year. But I am with you on the Steelers. I also think I'm going to give them a little bit of a break on losing this game. They have played 3 games in 12 days, so it's not like they've had a lot of time off. We've talked about it. They've been the one team that's really kind of gotten jobbed by all of these movings around in the schedule by COVID. So they looked good for the most part. I mean, I would think it's fair to say if their wide receivers aren't dropping the passes that they dropped yesterday, they probably end up winning this game. I mean, they played, I think, up to par, if not possibly a little bit better than Washington yesterday. They just, for whatever reason, the past 2 games, including that game against Baltimore, which they all honestly probably should have lost as well, we're just dropping balls left and right, just couldn't get the offense going. But that defense has still been phenomenal. So, and that's going to be the biggest thing, is if their defense can keep them in games. It is obviously a big matchup this week, and I'm with you. I mean, those are 4 big games, and I hate to even put it this way, but if they lose the next 2 games or 3 games, all of a sudden – that puts you 2. Oh, wait, no. 2? Yeah, they would have to lose the next 3, I think. If they go into the Week 17 matchup with the Browns tied, that would be a battle for the AFC North crown right there, which would also mean a home playoff game. So that could be huge. I don't expect that to happen because I'm not sure. I don't think the Browns, they get Baltimore, and then the Giants is we were quickly learning, is not an easy win. Jets, that'll be the team that they end up slipping up to, but I think is going to be a win for the Browns. So it's not an easy schedule for the Steelers, but they definitely have a team that could keep up with that for sure. They're their team that could easily win their next couple and stay in the race with the Chiefs as the top seed in the AFC. The second game here on Monday night, the Bills ended up beating the 49ers 34-24. Josh Allen had a huge game in prime time, 30 points. Devin Singletary, 11. Cole Beasley could not be covered by anybody in this one, 28 points. Stephon Diggs, 19. Gabriel Davis, 15. Dawson Knox, 12. The Bills win and the pass offense looked good. How do you feel about their performance last night?
I think they look good. I think they had what felt like a little stumble in the middle of the season. They seem to have righted that. Next week's game with Pittsburgh, to me, is huge. Pittsburgh needs it to say, hey, the last couple weeks were an aberration. Buffalo really needs it, I think, for credibility. I think they're a team that people still aren't taking incredibly seriously. They need to keep winning and put themselves on a track. They have Miami right in their rear view. Patriots seem to be coming on. Their division isn't quite the lock it seemed like, 3 or 4 weeks ago either. I think it's a huge statement game for both those teams, and I'm really curious to see where they're coming, especially coming off of these kind of dual experiences on Monday night.
Yeah, I mean, they're one of those teams where I could see them easily being in the Super Bowl. I think they've got an offense that, in all honesty, can keep up with the Chiefs, and I think their defense is better than Kansas City's. And if they are really starting to put it all together, like we kind of saw them do in the middle of the year or beginning of the year, then as you mentioned, they kind of hit that stumbling block where Allen and that offense, the defense has still played great all year, but that offense kind of seemed to struggle. And I will say that it was good to see them play the way they did last night because I honestly think they've really kind of struggled without having John Brown out there as well. I don't know why, but it seems like that connection between him and Allen has kind of hurt him a little bit on the field. But the way Beasley has stepped up here lately, we've seen Gabriel Davis, and I know you were talking about last week.
And Dawson Knox finally rising from the dead.
Finally.
2 weeks in a row with a TD.
Gabriel Davis has started to step up here a little bit, maybe to replace that John Brown role. So it's good to see that offense is rolling. They really do look like one of the better teams in the AFC right now. On San Francisco's side, Mostert, 5 points. Brandon Ayuk, 20. Deebo Samuel, 13. And Jordan Reed, 12. Tough loss for the 49ers. With their schedule and being 5-7 right now, are they already running out of luck?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it's a little easier road in the NFC, but they still have a division opponent in Arizona who's 6-6 ahead of them. Minnesota 6-6 ahead of them. There's a pack of teams at 5-7. I just feel like it's been too many injuries, and I think we're going to see this shift of locations take a toll. The 49ers aren't likely to have a true home game the rest of the season. That's that's kind of tough. Arizona has nice facilities. That's not really your home.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you. I mean, I feel like we kind of all wrote the 49ers off anyways earlier because of all the injuries. So I think you've got to give it to Kyle Shanahan and them for even coming back into this race. I do kind of think they're out of it. I think we talked about it last week. It almost felt like they kind of had to win out for the most part to make it in. I do think you'll probably get a 9-7 team in. I just think with as tough as that NFC West is, I'm not sure that they have it in them to run the table because I'm pretty sure they play all 3 of their division rivals in the next week.
Well, that's really the thing. So they got 7 losses. They host Washington this next week.
Which not an easy win as we saw last night.
Easy win. Yeah. And Washington has a ton to play for. They're at the Cowboys, maybe. They're at the Cardinals and then home for the Seahawks. That game's January 3rd. I guess it's possible they end up back in San Francisco, but smart money says they're probably in Arizona.
Yeah.
So, they would. I'm with you. I think from this point they'd have to run the table. Yeah. And you're talking about Washington, Arizona, and Seattle. I mean, those teams have all been vulnerable. And as we saw, they came up. One of the reasons we have to still be talking about them in the playoffs picture is week 5 when they went to Los Angeles and beat the Rams. So They play hard. I still admire what Kyle Shanahan has done. I wouldn't be surprised if they finish 8-8. I don't know that they can go 4-0 from here.
Yeah, I think, and I hate to say it, but as bad as we keep saying that the NFC is, 8-8's not going to guarantee you a playoff spot. I think you still have to be 9-7, even with that extra wild card.
Or a wild card anyway.
Yeah, there's so many teams in that race right now that I think you have to be 9-7. Where the crazy thing about that is we were talking about in the AFC, I think you have to have almost 11 wins to kind of secure yourself a spot into the playoffs. So it's definitely a little bit tighter in the AFC, but I'm with you. I think, unfortunately, they needed to win that game last night to make sure they kind of keep that momentum going toward a playoff spot.
As we say that, I'm looking. So Vikings have a game up on them at 6-6, but the Vikings last 4 at Tampa Bay, home for the Bears, at the Saints, at the Lions. So not exactly the easiest. And then the other one, I mean, the real thing's going to come down to being able to dominate in their division. So the Cardinals last 4 at the Giants, which, that's not an easy one, as we saw, versus the Eagles at home, versus the 49ers at home, and at the Rams. So all 3 of those teams have potential. I think it is possible 8-8 ends up being the last seed. Then you'd have to look at tiebreakers and things like that. But, it's probably going to be a tough road, and the 49ers set themselves a little bit further behind because they're now a game back of both Arizona and Minnesota.
Well, see, here's the crazy thing is that, and I don't think this, I mean, I guess we could be wrong. This could possibly happen, but we've been talking so much crap about the NFC East lately. There's a realistic shot that Washington or the Giants run the table the rest of the schedule, or both of them, because they don't play each other game, and then both of them are sitting there at 8-7, and they both play the 49ers in the next coming weeks, which means they would have the head-to-head win if they beat the 49ers so that they could get in as well. So the NFC is wide open, including 2 teams in the NFC East, which I did
the
not
one 5-7 team that I think is probably out is the Lions, because their last 4 is home for the Packers, at the Titans, home for the Buccaneers, home for the Vikings. Let's look at the Bears. I mean, it's really going to come down to schedule, and there is such a packed group. We do forget. We were talking about the
Bears have a chance.
Yeah,
I'm
so
looking
the
at
Bears,
their schedule.
Texans, Vikings, Jaguars, Packers, and they really need to turn it around. If they can beat the Texans, go to 6-7, I think they have a chance with the Vikings. That's where, Vikings, Cardinals, I like them on paper better than some of the other teams in this group, but they've been so enigmatic at times. And if the Giants beat the Cardinals this week, not only will they stay in first in their division, but they would probably leapfrog them in terms of competing for a wild card. So even if they end up falling behind Washington, you're right. We spent all this time. It's possible that you get 2 teams in the NFC East that get back to 8-8, and both of them get in, which would be kind of a fantastic story after how they started.
Well, I'm looking at this, and I really think it's going to come down to a bunch of teams competing for one spot, because I thought maybe Tampa Bay could fall back some, but Vikings, Falcons, Lions, Falcons, I kind of feel like they're going to win more than lose those.
You never know.
Which kind of puts them in but I feel like right now I would feel that they're probably up there, so that really only leaves one spot open, because right now you got Seattle and Los Angeles are both pretty far up on some of these other teams. I wouldn't imagine they lose a couple games straight. They could. But so you're really looking at a bunch of teams vying for that last spot, which is Arizona, San Francisco, Chicago, Detroit, and then Washington, New York, whoever is not the winner of that division.
And don't you feel like it's going to be like that in the AFC, only you're talking about 10, 11 wins?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the crazy part about it, is like you are. When you look at it in the AFC, you're looking at the teams that are all in it. The worst record one is New England at 6-6. Anybody below that doesn't have a chance to get in it. And so, and even New England sitting there as in you have to win out, because I legitimately, when people were talking, I was talking with some Browns fans like, hey, we only need one more win and we're in. It's like, no, you need to get 2 to make sure that you're into the playoffs. Like if you get 10, there's still a shot. I hate to put it this way because the bad juju could get us, but back in 2010, I think it was, with Derek Anderson, when he led the Browns finished 10-6 and missed out on making the playoffs because a couple teams just ahead of them had an 11-5 record. So there's no guarantee. You've got to get that 11th win, I think, in the AFC with as loaded as it is. So it's crazy. It's going to be the good thing, I guess, is there's a lot of teams in it. So for those of us that have teams, I've got 2 teams that I know for sure are in. I still got a couple going tonight that'll determine how many more teams I get into the playoffs. But everybody's going to be playing hard down to the wire here these next couple weeks. So it's going to make fantasy football and obviously the NFL a lot of fun as well. So a couple news notes before we get into talking about waivers, and then we'll get out of here. As Matt mentioned, obviously Doug Peterson came out earlier today and announced that Carson Wentz is benched. They are going with Jalen Hurts at least this week. I mean, I'm excited to see what he does. I think it's kind of hard to throw Jalen Hurts out there going up against the New Orleans Saints defense, which has definitely looked a lot better here the last couple of weeks. But what are your thoughts on Wentz getting benched and Jalen Hurts getting the start?
Kind of talked about this yesterday. I don't think Hurts is probably the answer, but you've had fans clamoring that they need to make a change. The most popular guy in the town is always the backup quarterback. And after you saw him get inserted in that Green Bay game, and, his numbers weren't gaudy, 5 of 12, only 70-something yards. They still lost, but he seemed to give them a spark, seemed to play a little bit different. You got to see what he has, and you got to see what you have in him. I think you owe it to your football team. For as bad as the Eagles have played, and we like Washington and New York, they seem to be surging. The Eagles aren't technically out of it, so if they had a strong, if they win 4 straight games, they could get to 7 wins. It's possible still that 7 and 9 ends up being enough. And because they have that tie on their record, maybe they get to 7, 8 and 1, and that ends up being the difference. That's what they've got to play for. I don't know if Hurts gets him there, but Wentz wasn't getting him there. You're falling further and further behind, further and further out of the picture.
Yeah.
And probably for Wentz, at this point, he looks like his confidence is shaken. He's been beaten up. Maybe he needs a break, needs some options. I know a lot of people are talking about now, well, they're definitely going to trade him. I don't find his contract that tradable. The other thing that people forget,
I think someone can make a move for him. As I saw that, so I did a lot of deep dive, but go ahead. I'll tell you why I think they could move him.
But the thing that you're forgetting is the signing bonus, dead cap, stays with the original team. So they would still have to eat like a $20 or $30 million dead cap situation. I'm not sure anyone's pumped to do that in Philly.
Right. So I don't necessarily disagree with you, but it kind of goes back to what we were talking about yesterday. Say Jalen Hurts, again, I think a lot of if they end up moving Wentz in the offseason will be predicated on what we see out of Jalen Hurts the rest of the season. Because I imagine they're not going back to Carson Wentz in week 15. It's going to be the Hurts show unless he gets hurt throughout the rest of the season, would be my guess. Say Jalen Hurts goes out there and maybe doesn't light the world on fire, but just clearly looks better than Wentz. They win a bunch of games, almost make the playoffs. Hurts just for whatever reason looks better in this offense. They decide, hey, because it does seem like they're leaning toward firing Rosen anyways. They fire Rosen, but they're like, hey, you did well, Doug Peterson with Jalen Hurts. We're going to keep you on here. If you keep Carson Wentz as your backup quarterback, he's still sitting there getting paid all that money for nothing. If another team comes calling and says, hey, I'll tell you the team in a minute, but a team that is looking at least right now to be a playoff contender, Super Bowl contender with the offense and defense they have around them, number 1 in the NFL in cap space right now, could easily take on the Carson Wentz contract and still have money to play with. For a lot of other players, do not have a lot of players hitting free agency outside of one wide receiver, where they've drafted young wide receivers the past couple of years to replace them. If they come calling to the Eagles like, hey, because of how much money is owed to Carson Wentz, we'll give you like a 2nd-round pick and a 5th or something like that. Even though the Eagles have to eat that cap this year and I think next year, you're still getting at least a little bit of draft capital back.
Usually when you cut or trade, it accelerates the cap hit all into 1 year. If they did it in the offseason, it would accelerate it all into 1 year.
So that even better. You're looking at 1 year, you're going to have to just eat everything. And I mean, let's be honest, with the cap held that the Eagles already look like they're in right now because of Rosen, I don't think if they move on from Carson Wentz and they're just going to have to pretty much use next year, 2021, as a rebuild year, wouldn't be a bad thing for Philly because I don't think that they have the roster around him to be competitive anyways, if I'm being honest. I just they've got too many issues. I mean, all their offensive linemen are getting overpaid, can never stay healthy. They're all aging veterans. They don't have any youth on that offensive line. So my question was, because I was talking to someone about this, and I think it'd be a good fit, and it's a player that we've already talked about, or not a player, a team that we've talked about possibly making a trade for a veteran quarterback in the Indianapolis Colts. Frank Reich knows Carson Wentz. He's got a relationship with him. He was on that staff when Carson Wentz was, and I believe technically Frank Reich was the offensive play caller for the year that Carson Wentz was going to be an MVP until he blows out his leg and diving into the end zone. And then Nick Foles comes in. Obviously, Foles takes him to the Super Bowl and all that. But Wentz's best year came with Frank Reich there on that offensive staff. They have more than enough cap room to take on his contract and everything. I mean, I'm not saying if Wentz can get back to anything close to what he was even last year, he immensely improves that offense. And I think, again, they can take on the salary. I don't think it would be a bad fit because, I mean, I know Wentz has not been great this year, but I think if you're telling me get to Carson Wentz over Phillip Rivers moving forward, give me Carson Wentz. I don't think Jacoby Brissett's the answer either. And I mean, I drafted Jacob Eason in a bunch of places, but I'm going to be honest, he's got way too many questions as well. He's had a bunch of questions coming out into the draft last year.
So I was looking at Wentz's contract. It looks like he has big things that are like an option bonus and a roster bonus. I don't know if those kind of things can transfer to a team with a trade. If it could, that would drop I know signing bonus always stays with the original team. It looks like if all that accelerated into 1 year, you're talking about a $10 to $12 million cap hit, which actually may not be terrible. But if all those roster bonuses and everything go, you're talking about a $60 million cap hit.
Yeah. And again, that's the thing we talked about is that you're taking the cap hit regardless at this point if you're Philly. He's either sitting on your bench, right? Because if Jalen Hurts, again, this is all predicated on what Jalen Hurts does. Thing, though,
if he's sitting on your bench, it's a $25.4 million cap hold. If you release him, it could be a $60 million cap hold.
Okay. But that goes to my point, and you're not, in my opinion, I could be wrong. I don't think Philly is competing for a Super Bowl next year. They just have too many issues on their roster, in my opinion.
I don't know if they would. You know what? I don't know that the team would agree with that.
Well, I understand that the team not. They're going to think they're in the Super Bowl run every year, I would think. But, I mean, you don't have – say Jalen Hurts plays better than Carson Wentz, whatever. Say he plays as we'll just use it fantasy-wise, a high-end QB2. So he's playing good. He's not great, but he's playing very good, right? Would you – them coming back next year with obviously – Washington is an interesting team. New York Giants, who've clearly played much better. They don't have as many big free agents coming into this year. Them coming back, getting Daniel Jones, and you have Dallas coming back, getting Dak Prescott back, who, again, while their defenses look like complete crap, that offense could keep them in every single game that they're in. You're telling me, again, I know, I want your opinion. I know what Philly's going to think. Your opinion, the chances of the Eagles winning that division and making the playoffs next year.
I mean, I think the NFC East is still wide open.
Okay.
I don't know. If I was Indianapolis, I'm not sure I would do it. And honestly, if I was Philadelphia, I wouldn't do it.
See, I would. I'd get rid. I don't want to get rid of Carson Wentz because I still think he's talented. Again, but if Hurts comes in there and plays better than what we've seen out of Wentz and they think he's the guy, I'm still not sold on Jalen Hurts. I think Carson Wentz is the better quarterback. But if they believe that Jalen Hurts can be the guy, you're going to keep him sitting on your bench then for 3 years at $20+ million. What is it? I can't remember what because it falls off on 23. I remember that 23 is his cap is very low.
Yeah, I just closed it. It's 30 something.
I think it's 30, 28,
and then like 12 or something. Yeah, 8.
And then 8. Okay, I know the last year is just under 10. So you're then going to leave him sitting on your bench for a couple years, paying him a ton of money, which again, it can work, as we mentioned a couple episodes ago, because Jalen Hurts is on that rookie contract. So you're still eating up a ton of cap on your quarterback, but it's just not the quarterback on the field. But it's still not that big of an issue because you don't have to pay Hurts yet. Or again, I get that you accelerate all of the money, but then it comes in and crushes you for one season. You get some draft capital back, which helps because it helps you get younger players in positions you need. And then all of a sudden you free up all of this cap, which, let's be honest, you paid way too much on a quarterback anyways. I mean, they were talking about Dak Prescott not even getting this deal. And as much as I don't like Dak, I'm paying Dak more than I am Carson Wentz.
I honestly think the reality is if Hurts looks good, they enter next year as an open competition.
Oh, I'm sure
they do absolutely nothing in terms of moving on from him in 2021, no matter what. And then if that doesn't work out, then they consider their options after that.
We'll see. I think if a new GM comes in, depending on how Mr. Loria handles it, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up just moving him. If it's like I don't think they're keeping Rosen. I don't. I from everything I'm hearing and things I'm reading from Eagle beat writers and everything is that he's pretty much fired. So, I mean, you're having a new GM come in.
But I don't think they dump Peterson, and I don't think Peterson's ready to give up on Carson Wentz. So that's a big part of it. I also don't think the Eagles are ready to give up on the idea that they can't win the NFC East again. And once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen. Do I think they're great? I don't particularly. I also think there's every possibility Jalen Hurts gets lit up like a Christmas tree when they're at New Orleans this week. It's the worst possible first start. And I almost wonder if that's not part of why they decided to make him the starter this week, because you're looking at New Orleans, you get the S beaten out of you, and then we see Wentz come back for the rest of the season. Like, again, you wanted Jalen Hurts, look at what you got.
I don't disagree on the Hurts thing. Again, I said all of my theories on what could happen with Wentz are predicated on Hurts being good. And I don't know if that happens. I would say right now, again, I'm full transparency, I would take Wentz over Hurts right now. I do not think Hurts is the answer, but I could be wrong. And so I agree with you. They may not want to give up on him, but they bring in a new GM. It may not matter what Doug Peterson thinks. And again, I know people.
But in a year where the salary cap is at best going to stay flat, but most likely going to drop, again, we have to figure out what would be the true cap hit when they trade him.
I'm not sure
how those bonuses things work, but if all of those bonus amounts stick, you're talking about 4 more years of $10 million roster bonuses and 4 more years of $6 million bonuses for options, plus $3.5 million each of those years for a signing bonus. You're talking about a $60 million hit. That's double what it would cost to keep him on the roster. Yeah. That's where, if you're a GM and you do that, you might as well pack your office.
See, there's been teams that have done it before, though. That's the thing. If you accelerate
not to that level,
maybe not to that level, but it's something where you're getting out of a mistake that somebody else made. Like, that's the thing. I don't see it's not
at that price.
See, I disagree. It's
just cap drops to 150, and you take 60 million in dead cap. You're actually going to have to cut the veterans you have to be able to make it.
They're going to have to cut. They're going to cut some of their veterans anyway. They can't keep Jason Peters on there anymore. They can't keep Travis. It's not Travis Kelce. What is it?
Zach Ertz.
No. The other Kelce brother who plays there. He's the offensive lineman. Jason Kelce. They pay these guys so much money and they can't stay healthy and get on the field. Like, I think Philly is in for a huge roster change anyways, regardless of what's coming, because most of their money is tied up into that offensive line and some of those defensive players that are just not producing. They're just not. And I don't know, again, maybe they don't get rid of Wentz. I think it would be the smart decision to do. You have to start all over, in my opinion. You've got good pieces. You have nowhere near a good enough team, in my opinion, to keep competing. They're just too many aging veterans, too many players that are not doing anything. I mean, we've seen this defense has been god-awful the past couple years. They have not been good. And they keep saying, oh, well, the injuries this. Well, it's 3-4 years worth of the injuries that's keeping you guys out of it. That's just not the case. And no, it's just bad play. And I hate to say that, but you even go to talk to Philly fans, none of them feel the way about Carson Wentz we do. Like, everybody seems to forget in Philly, what Carson Wentz was before Nick Foles took over. All everybody thinks about in Philly is, well, Nick Foles won us a Super Bowl. And if you really look at it, Nick Foles was good for 2 games. Now, it was the 2 games that mattered in the championship game against the Vikings and the Super Bowl against the Patriots. But even his first couple of games in the playoffs, he was not that good. He almost lost him a game. So I just feel like for whatever reason, they don't believe in Carson Wentz the way people on the outside still believe in Wentz. And there's a lot of people who don't outside. Everything's coming to a head, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see massive changes in Philly. Eventually you've got to do something. What they do, I don't know. It's going to make what they do in the offseason fascinating to talk about. Their division rivals and the Cowboys do play tonight against the Ravens. Big game for both teams. Technically, the Cowboys are not out of it. The Ravens are currently sitting out of the playoff race, looking in, and don't have necessarily an easy schedule moving forward. They've still got a couple of tough games on their schedule. What are you thinking tonight? Obviously, the big name, at least for me, and on that Cowboys offense is Zeke. Can he get going back again tonight? Amari Cooper has been fabulous, even since Dalton's come back in here. But you're going to need Dalton to look good against this secondary. I mean, for me personally, I think you have to rely heavily on Zeke tonight because Dalton just hasn't been great. He's not been, I think, what any of us expected when he signed with them, and us thinking, hey, they've got a great backup, and then that goes down. We all thought it was going to be an easy transition for him coming in. Hasn't quite been that way. And now they get one of the better secondaries in the NFL, which, don't get me wrong, Amari Cooper, Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, one of the best wide receiver cores. But with Andy Dalton as my quarterback, I'm not sure I'm throwing the ball to Amari Cooper a lot with Marlon Humphrey covering him.
Especially in prime time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. If this game would have been last Thursday, I think Dallas fares better. I think the Ravens have gotten enough pieces back. I still think this is going to be a sloppy and kind of gross game to watch. I also feel like Dallas has hit a point where they want to see what they have in Tony Pollard. I know you are. I would be a little nervous about Zeke tonight.
No, I've already given
their offensive line is also
beat up. Yeah,
it went from being the strength of the team to one of its biggest liabilities. Primetime Andy. I am not expecting a great performance from the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I think possibly keeps them in this game is just that. You've had Baltimore, who is getting players back on and off, still on the COVID list. They've not been able to practice as much as either. We've really seen that these Tuesday, Wednesday games have just not been that good. And I think a lot of it goes to NFL players being such creatures of habit. You're not used to playing on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Most NFL players, Tuesday's your off day. So you're still kind of trying to figure out what you're doing. So, I'm with you. I think it's going to be a little bit of a sloppy game, especially because we saw Jackson just came off of IR recently.
Yesterday.
He has not practiced with the team at all either. So, while I do think he obviously plays tonight, I don't think they're going to go to Trace McSorley. I think that they're going to kind of rely on Dobbins and Ingram and Gus, who have all been off COVID now Gus never went on, but Ingram and Dobbins have been off for about a little less than a week now.
Gus never went on, but I will tell you, last Wednesday, he looked like he played with COVID.
Yeah. It was
9 carries, 10 yards. Good Lord.
So I think they rely heavily on that run game, especially with as bad as the Cowboys defense has been all year.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of running probably on both sides. I would not be surprised if this game's in the teens. I just don't think, like, if you're hoping for that Tuesday night miracle to save your fantasy season, this is not a 45-point Lamar Jackson game. This is like a 14-point Lamar Jackson game, in my opinion.
If that, I don't think he's going to do much running. I really don't think he's going to do much passing either. I mean, the one thing I've said for Dallas is their defense against the pass has actually been getting better since earlier in the season, really since that Browns game. But that defense against the run, I mean, we saw it on Thanksgiving when they who'd they play last week?
The Cowboys?
That was the last game they played.
Thanksgiving,
right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the other problem for Dallas. It's now a 12-day layoff, which is sort of brutal to them too, because, we've seen teams on too short and too long a layoff kind of come out rusty.
Yeah. So I'm with you. I do not expect it to be a good game at all tonight. I'll still be watching it because it's football. I'll be switching back and forth, at least that in the college football rankings. But it's not. I don't think it's going to be a pretty game tonight. So waivers going into the playoffs. Obviously, for those of you who've secured it or looking to possibly secure your spots tonight, waivers I would think run still Wednesday morning for everybody because the game will be over tonight. I know one of my leagues got moved.
They won't on ESPN, I'll tell you that, because ESPN didn't run waivers until Friday night last week.
Well, it's I think because of the Wednesday game.
But that's the thing. It locks and it doesn't become official until midnight following the last game. So it'll lock and become official at midnight Wednesday, and then you have all day Wednesday to make your things, and it'll be overnight Thursday.
What was it? Because I don't play on a lot of ESPN ones. Like I said, most of mine are MFL, and they've been moving. I think the last time they did the Tuesday night game was the Bills-Steelers one. Was it Bills-Steelers?
Waivers ran Thursday morning.
Yeah, so I would think they run Thursday. So quarterbacks, the top two here, Mitchell Trubisky is 13% rostered, and then Jalen Hurts 1%. Yeah. I'm going Trubisky easily, and Hurts is.
You're talking about playoffs. I'm not taking Hurts. They have a tough schedule. I don't know what we're going to see in him. I don't think it was a bad move for Philly. It'd be a bad move for your fantasy team. Even Trubisky, I have to ask myself, how desperate am I? Because you're talking about going to the playoffs now. He's had some okay games. They don't have a terrible schedule, as we saw. Texans looks like a pretty prime matchup. Texans, Vikings, Jaguars. The real thing that's a nod in Trubisky's favor would be the schedule. But as you and I talked about yesterday, I'm a little nervous that I'm watching to make sure Trubisky stays the guy and they don't revert back to Nick Foles, crusher of dreams.
I don't think that they will, as we talked about yesterday. I think we were both kind of on they'll keep with Trubisky, but you never know.
Nagy's on the hottest of hot seats, and if he thinks for a second Nick Foles gets him magically into the playoffs by resuming the big dick Nick role, then all our hopes and dreams are out the window.
The top three running backs, which I don't know if you can look up McKissick's really quick. I imagine he's pretty well rostered because of what happened earlier in the year.
Yeah, I'll look him up. But
AP at 48%, Ty Johnson, who obviously had the big game for the Jets last week, 2%, and Peyton Barber 1%. Did you get McKissick's?
McKissick is 61% on ESPN, 48% on Yahoo.
So Yahoo, you might actually have a chance on him. ESPN, I think it's probably going to be pretty slim chance. If McKissick is on there, I'm going McKissick. He's the guy that I want out of these. Because AP had the big game, but I think, at least I would hope Swift is coming back eventually. I don't know.
That's the question. So if you knew Swift was going to be out, AP would be a little more interesting to me. I'm actually kind of interested in Ty Johnson. I thought he looked pretty good.
He looked good, yeah.
The Jets have been running a lot. Gore with a concussion, I don't think it's any lock. He comes back right away. But again, I think if you're looking at any of these, it's because you're facing some true desperation, or maybe because you lost Gibson. And hopefully if you lost Gibson, you had McKissick anyway.
Yeah, so for me, it'd be McKissick, Ty Johnson, and then even if we knew Swift was out, AP would still be third for me. Peyton Barber, I honestly have no interest in whatsoever.
Peyton Barber, you're basically just praying for what you saw last night, which is 20 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah. Wide receivers, T.Y. Hilton, who's obviously had a couple of good weeks, or back-to-back good weeks here, 45% rostered. Then you got Kiki Kuti, 27, Tim Patrick, 21, Rashard Higgins, 9, and Gabriel Davis, 5. How would you rank these guys for you at wide receiver?
I mean, there's a reason Hilton used to be like such a value in fantasy. He's had 2 good weeks. I don't know why, but part of me just does not want to believe in him right now. I liked Kuti. I thought he got good volume. They need receivers there. It's not the greatest matchup going to Chicago. Tim Patrick there against Carolina, which I would think would be a pretty decent matchup, especially since Carolina just put half its defense on the COVID IR today. And he seems to really have something going with Locke. Higgins, I like. I don't know if I always trust the passing volume for the Browns, and they're playing the Ravens. Gabe Davis, I like, but they are also playing Pittsburgh. So it's probably for me, I'm doing Patrick Hilton, Davis, Kuti, Higgins.
So Tyler Lockett versus the Jets or Nick Chubb versus the Ravens, half-point PPR. I'm assuming this is for week 13.
14.
I'm sorry, yeah, week 14.
I think I'm going with Lockett.
Probably. I don't see how you don't put Chubb in your lineup.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough too.
Because, I mean, the thing with Lockett is you're getting the half-point PPR points, obviously, with the catches, which you're not really getting that with Chubb. They don't use him in the passing game. But, man, I think the Browns are coming into this game. They need a win. Baltimore, while they've still been very good on the ground, we know that's the Browns' MO is to run the ball. Chubb's going to get the goal line. We've seen really the past couple weeks since he's been back. They're not using Hub back in the red zone anymore. It's gone back to full Chubb. They've really kind of, as you mentioned on Monday's show, they've really kind of pulled back on using Hunt a little bit here. Yeah, so man, it'd be hard because if they get down in the red zone a couple times and Chubb gets you a couple touchdowns, I think thing with Jets is they've been playing better, and Seattle has just been kind of playing weird. They've not looked good, but
the Jets' pass defense has been hideous. The Raiders saw Waller and Henry Ruggs have their best games of the season, and Aguilar had a pretty big game.
Yeah, but Henry Ruggs came on one play. That's the thing. Like, Henry Ruggs didn't really have a great game. It was one play, which was the Hail Mary at the end of the game that got him literally all of his points. Waller was the one. Waller obviously balled out, but you could argue then, okay, that's really the one player. Well, if that's DK Metcalf that week, there's no guarantee Lockett has that game. Where I think if you're going for upside, I'm going Lockett. If you want the safer floor, I think it's Chubb. Because I think Chubb's going to get you, in my opinion, roughly 8 to 10 points, at least. I think that's his floor. Where Lockett, yeah, I think Lockett definitely has higher upside because I don't see Chubb going off for like 150 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Ravens. But I could easily see 50, 60 yards and a touchdown, so that gets you anywhere from 10 to 12 points. And Lockett, I think his floor is a lot lower. Would you agree with that?
I don't know. Based on that's why I was going to go look and see what Lockett's.
Eckler and Cook at running back. I'd probably still start Eckler and Cook over Chubb at running back. I'd keep those guys both in.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2 good options to have. I'm still sticking with Lockett because of the Jets' pass defense and the fact that I think Seattle has to come out and try to hip check somebody after an embarrassing home loss.
All right. For me on the wide receivers, I would go Patrick 1. Probably Hilton 2. I think I'd go Higgins 3. I mean, they just really have seemed I've mentioned it before earlier in the season when he wasn't playing at all. I didn't understand why he wasn't playing. Him and Baker have that connection. Baker looks for him a lot, and I do think that they're slowly the past couple of weeks moving. They're not going to be heavy pass every single week, but they've been moving toward a more pass-happy offense, and I think that they're going to have to be more pass-happy with some of the games they have coming up against Baltimore, the Giants, and the Steelers because they have better defenses who know that they need to stop the run. We've seen now Stefanski is not afraid to throw the ball with Baker. Baker has looked better here the past couple weeks as well. So I think for me, Higgins has a little bit more value over Kuti and Davis, who I think are a little bit more dependent on certain things. So I would still go Patrick 1, with especially the way he's been playing with Locke, then Hilton, Higgins, Kuti, Davis last for me. Then to finish up here, tight ends, Logan Thomas, 40% rostered, Anthony Ferguson, 9, and Cole Kmet, 1. How would you rank these 3 tight ends?
So I get the being excited about Kmet because of what we saw last week, but Jimmy Graham's not injured as far as I can tell.
Well, they did. So I looked into this today because I was curious about this. The Bears actually, which I did not notice this, before the bye said going into the bye week, Kmet would come out being their starting tight end. So that is why we've seen Jimmy Graham fall off and Cole Kmet has kind of come on the past couple weeks. He has been moved up to their starting tight end. I don't know how much that changes because I feel like the tight end really hasn't done much with Trubisky in the offense anyway. It's the Allen Robinson show, but that is why we've seen Jimmy Graham fall off.
So Thomas is a clear number 1 for me no matter what. And then Ferkser, I feel like he has some role when Smith is there, but his value goes up in my esteem if you know Smith is going to be out. Like I picked him up and rolled him as a starting streamer in a league in week 13 when I found out Smith was going to be out. So I think you'd have to monitor the health. I know Smith has been blocking more and Ferkser's had opportunities. I just don't think it's consistent enough. So depending on the health of Smith, I would probably flip Kmet and Ferkser for me. If I thought Smith was out, I might lean Ferkser. If not, Kmet. You know, they probably are trying to get him looks and trying to get the younger guys involved.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's clearly Logan Thomas, especially after we saw last night. The fact that he's still only rostered in 40% of leagues is insane to me because he's been good for the most part all season. So, and especially with Alex Smith, since Alex Smith has really taken over as the actual quarterback, he's gone to Logan Thomas more often than not. So I'd go easily him, Ferkser, and then Kmet for me as well. So that will do it for us today. We will be back on Thursday to preview what is the Thursday night football game. Because I feel like we haven't had a Thursday night football game in like 5 weeks.
You know, I forgot what it is too. There will be a game, and we'll also talk about the tragedy, which I thought was an appropriate name for.
Yes.
Let's see. Week 14. The Thursday night game is the New England Patriots at the Los Angeles Rams.
Oh, that's actually a good one.
Some huge playoff implications for both teams.
Well, we only have 2 weeks left of Thursday games, right? It's just 14 or 3, I guess, technically 14, 15, 16, because I know there isn't one week 17. I'm just not sure if there's a Thursday
I'm not
night
sure if there
is.
Let's see. Week 16 there is not because it's Christmas Eve.
So it's a Saturday. They have the Saturday game.
They have a Friday night game on Christmas night, Minnesota and New Orleans. So I guess that would be kind of the finale of
gotcha.
You know that. And then they have 3 on Saturday that week.
Yeah. I love it.
And the last Monday. So yeah, that's a huge weekend of games over 4 days.
Yep. All right. So we will be back Thursday to talk Rams and Patriots. We will do any kind of other NFL news that's popped up, obviously. And then, of course, our weekly fireside chat about the Mandalorian. So everybody enjoy the game tonight between the Ravens and the Cowboys. We will see you guys again on Thursday.